This episode is dedicated to Les Avery. The night sky is lucky to welcome a star as bright as you. Quiet, friends. I have a tale to tell before the tavern closes tonight. I have come a very long way, and seen so many places. I've heard many stories, and I am happy to be here now, to share them with you. So, gather round. Today, I wish to speak to you of a knighthood of great warriors. Along the Waywind mountain range to the north lies a great tundral expanse, only broken by the needle-bearing trees that form massive forests in which our story begins. A small city sat between the mountains and the wilds, named Granit-Hastoro. It was a hard place, as the blizzards were made all the more deadly as they rushed down the foothills, and the people of the Northlands were under siege. One of the Northlander nations, the Trevoli Pietum, a religious and proud nation of northern knights and spellmasters, had begun to expand outward, threatening to swallow all that lay around it. They claimed their gods, Avatonyan, Imola, Tihira, Oldarana, had conspired in the heavens and decreed that the Tevolans were meant to unite the Northlands. However, the people of Granit-Hastoro only had one god, Avidon, the frozen dragon of hardship. The city-state refused to bow, and as such war broke out between them. Granit-Hastoro was losing, but the forest helped shield them from siege weaponry and large battalions of soldiers. So, the war limped onward. A young soldier, born in Granit-Hastoro, was sitting on the city wall, carving a statuette of a horse. His name was Ital. He sat daydreaming and watching the sky as his knife worked the white pine, hoping for a day when the war would end. He would be a stable master, he thought, a horse lord raising the finest stallions and mares. His daydream was interrupted, however. Far, far in the distance he heard the most awful sound, a tremendous shriek like metal ripping through metal. He stood at attention and squinted to the horizon. It seemed the others had heard it, as many joined him in staring out at the tree line. Nothing could be seen, however. His commander, a stoic man named Artom, told him and 3 other soldiers to grab their equipment and go scout the strange sound. Ital grabbed his longbow, his hatchet and his sword, donned his chains and helmet, and stalked out of the city through the forest. The snow sat heavy on the old trees, and the blizzard had begun to pick up pace, flurries of white ice dancing through the air and chilling the young man to his core. The 4 of them walked through the woods, careful to spot any silhouette moving in the distance. As the noise got louder, they settled low and could see the enemy army pacing back and forth at the edge of the wood. With them was a dwarf, his dreaded hair long and black. He was looking at some large object hidden underneath a large tarp. Every so often he would mess with something and the sound would begin again. He tore the tarp off of his work and revealed a great and terrible machine. Bolted iron and copper tubing. It looked like a large stove. This man was Dalton, an inventor of great renown from the south. He was not a bad man, one inspired to make new things and create whatever he could to help others. A dwarf has to eat, you know, and he was being paid handsomely by the Trevoli Pietum to create great machines to help them win the war. The machine roared to life, shrieking its horrible song, before it began to shake and groan. Soldiers gathered around it, grabbing long, thin cords from the snow around its sides. They wrapped the cords around the trees, and then the machine in one heavy yank tore them from the ground. It could rip down 15 trees at a time, and the soldiers could affix the cords quickly. With this, the Trevolans could cut their way through the woods in a matter of months. Back to the city, Ital and his friends ran, through the thicket of pines, not even turning back to make sure they weren't seen. When they returned, they told Artem of the great metal beast, and he stared into the distance. With a machine such as that, the war could be lost. He went to tell the city court and left Ital alone, staring off the edge of the city wall as the horrible sound began again and again. Days passed. Scouts every morning reported that the enemy had moved ever closer. They reported that the enemy now hauled heavy metal contraptions behind them, that once a fuse had been lit, erupted with a boom and launched a heavy metal spear. They took forever to load, but they would prove dangerous in the coming days. Ital knew he had to do something, but as he walked the streets it all seemed so futile to him. One evening, as he was wandering home after a night of watching the wall, something caught his eye. His eyes were gifted with a statue made by one of the townsfolk of Avedon, the dragon god of hardship. He tilted his head as he looked at the stone decoration. Ital knew horses, and from what he knew, dragons are roughly the same size, perhaps just a little bigger. He ran to Artem and told him his plan. Artem rolled his eyes and ignored the young soldier, telling him to go home and rest. There would still be a few months before the enemy was at the gates, but he would need his sleep. Ital sulked home. He couldn't understand why Artem wouldn't even humor his idea. No one had ever ridden a dragon before, but there has to be a way to make it happen. Ital went home and gathered his things, his armor, his sword, his bow and arrows. On his way out of the gates, he stole the saddle off of Artem's horse, rationalizing that Artem would probably thank him later. That night he left the city, headed into the mountains to the south, deserting his army in the name of finding a way to save them. He walked through the Wayward Mountains, trudging through snow and rain, using his bow to hunt deer. His belly often grumbled as the food he could cook was nowhere near as nice as the food he would be eating if he hadn't left home. Doubt started to weigh on him. No one had ever ridden a dragon. He wandered further south, to the heart of the mountain range. What we know as the Dragonfang Range, his people call the Avedonian Peaks, home to hundreds of dragons hidden in their high caves, hunting food along the roads or deep in the wilderness. The trees started to thin as he passed the line where they grew. He was so high up it was hard to breathe, but the cold, crisp air felt so pleasant in his lungs. Little did he know, he was being watched. High upon a cliff was a young dragon with dull olive-green scales and shining yellow eyes. They watched Ital with curiosity. They had already eaten, and Ital wouldn't be much of a meal anyways, so the beast decided to torment him. Dragons are very smart, and they get enjoyment out of play and will often harass travelers just to see their reactions. So the beast descended from its cliffside home, releasing a mighty roar that sounded like a bear's, only much louder. Ital turned and saw the creature, and just watched it fly for a moment. This dragon was only a little bit taller and wider than a large horse, with wings that protruded from the center of its back. Ital figured if he could put the saddle in the center of its body, between the wings, there was a chance he could sit quite comfortably. The dragon seemed confused by the man's pausing, but that just caused it to panic. If this human didn't run away, it must be a hunter who's not afraid and wants to hurt it. They broke into a dive, stopping a few dozen hands above Ital, and then it took a massive breath. Ital recognized the danger and ran to a nearby tree. The dragon released a curving, burning torrent that scorched the ground, melting snow and catching bushes alight. Ital shut his eyes tight as it released the monstrous inferno. He could hear something behind the sound of the flames. A song. Some people, rare people, can hear the music behind magic. Typically, spell songs can only be heard by other magic users when they're listening closely to the world. But in this moment, Ital could hear the dragon song of fire. It sounded like drums. A duo of fiddles. And a loud, high-pitched horn. There were no lyrics to this song, but Ital instinctively started humming as though the words had been written in his heart. He walked closer to the dragon, who was still hovering in preparation to attack. When I met the Dragon Riders, they refused to tell me the lyrics to this song, but they said it is the only way a human's heart can be shown to a dragon in pure honesty. The dragon lowered and walked closer to Ital as he sang, its golden eyes curiously inspecting the young man. Soon, it sat beside him, then laid down with a satisfied growl. Ital knelt and affixed the saddle to the dragon's body. The straps groaned and stretched to fit around its wide torso, but when all was said and done, it fit quite well. Ital attached his quiver to the saddle and then climbed on. The dragon staggered to its feet and began to walk. It was a new experience for both of them and took a bit of adjustment. Just as Ital was about to get off and check the bindings of the saddle, the dragon took to the sky with several heavy beats of its large wings. Ital held on tight, begging the dragon to set him down, but it did not. It flew up the mountain peaks and began to commit to dives and glides over the trees. Ital could swear the beast was smiling, but as the wind and rain assailed his face, it was hard to actually keep his eyes open. The two began to travel back to Granitza-Storo, mostly by air but occasionally walking through the woods when the storms got too intense or the dragon's wings got tired. Ital decided to name the beast Waleke, and as they walked, their bond only grew. Hunting was easier from the air, and cooking became a far less daunting task. Waleke seemed interested in Ital's bow and sword, dragging them off whenever he stopped paying attention. Two months had passed since Ital left home, and as he and Waleke rounded the last corner on the snow-covered road, he could see the scar the Trevolan army had cut through the forest. It was massive, and now they sat unobstructed in a siege against the city, Granitza-Storo. He could hear their spear cannons firing and the sound of stone faltering. He was late, but not too late. He threw himself onto Waleke's back, and the beast instinctively took off into the mountain air, flying just tight enough to a rain cloud that he could not be easily seen from the ground. Ital squinted his eyes and tried to find the main line of cannons, quickly locating what he assumed to be the front line. He grabbed his bow and nocked an arrow. He took a deep breath. He was going to have to trust Waleke to steer. The dragon committed to a dive, sharply dropping in altitude as Ital drew back the heavy bowstring, and, as if by fate, loosed it at the perfect moment to lodge it in the shoulder of Doltan the inventor. Doltan fell and stared up in awe as Waleke and Ital hovered 20 hands above the battlefield, Waleke releasing flaming torrents towards the cannons, melting them to slag, while Ital drew and loosed dozens of arrows into as many soldiers as he could see. Waleke grabbed a soldier and flung him into the air with his back feet, while Ital drew his sword. He wasn't able to do much with it from the back of the beast, but it made for an amazing sight. Doltan stood and ran to the tree line, watching in wonder as Ital and Waleke burned and destroyed the battlefield. From the wall, Artem and the other soldiers cheered and wept with joy. The battle wound to a close with the Trevolin soldiers fleeing and breaking siege. Ital and Waleke burned all that remained of their camp, their siege engines, and their morale. The inventor Doltan approached Ital as the battle was cleaned up, and at first Ital drew his sword and pressed it to the dwarf's throat. Doltan told Ital that he had never seen anything as impressive as what he had just saw. He knelt for Ital, and as he did, many others did as well. The city built a massive tower, wide and tall, to contain Ital, Waleke, and any other dragons and dragon riders they could train. They became known as the Granitze Dragon Guard. Ital personally trained every dragon guard, teaching them the song to invite a dragon to view their spirit, teaching them aggressive and evasive flight, in dragon care and in the history of the great beasts. He didn't become a stable master per se, but many believe he found this calling to be more fulfilling than if he had followed his original dream. As years passed, Doltan grew to despise the things he had made for the Trevolins, and as time went on they revolutionized on his designs, making cannons that could be carried by a single soldier and used to fell even a dragon in a single shot. Ital and Doltan made armor for their dragons, better saddles, spears, and other weapons the riders could use, as well as goggles that would help them see while they fly. Those goggles became the symbol of the Granitze Dragon Guard, although they are based on the goggles dwarves wear to protect their eyes from the sun. The war did not stop. The Trevolin army continues to pollute the land, tear down the forests, hunt and kill dragons so that the guard cannot find enough to properly build their armies. But a single trained dragon rider is a far more dangerous threat than your average soldier. Every year, the current dragon lord takes their best recruits and brings them to the Avedonian peaks so that they may attempt to bond with a beast. Ital lost his life fighting the Trevolin army. A single shot from a dragon hunter's rifle cannon managed to lodge itself deep in Ital's chest in the middle of a battle. Waleke still lives, although no one has ridden them in 80 years. Their heart still aches at the loss of their first friend. Doltan is still alive, and it is from him that I learned this tale. Though he is old, his calloused hands still work tirelessly to make new tools and equipment for the Dragon Guard. Despite losing Ital, the Guard is still stalwart in their protection of their home, against invasion and destruction of the land, now led by Adamaske Lorraine, a young elven person with a kind and compassionate spirit. When I met the Granitze Dragon Guard, they had been recovering from a tremendous loss at the hands of the Trevolin army. 6 riders had died to rifle and cannon fire, but they stayed resolute in the face of their losses. Doltan gave me this story over a cup of tea, how he regretted what he made for the Trevolins, but not the act of innovation itself. Had he not served them, he would never have met one of the bravest men of this era. He told me to go in peace and to pass along this message. Stand strong in your convictions, but never fear being wrong. Fight for the world you have been given, but do not be too stubborn to realize when you have made a mistake. Nature is precious, but so too is the advancement of the world. What truly must happen will happen, but balance is the key. Fight for the world. Change it if you can, but when you are wrong you must be able to stop. There is no advancement worth the fall of this world. He often spoke in square circles, riddles and spirals that I'm not sure I understand. However, maybe that was the point of his message. The answer is too complicated to come to you until you are in a moment when you must know it. I would very much like to go back and see the Dragon Guard again. Their war is a sad one, but one they have simply no other choice but to win. I admire their bravery and their ability to stand in the face of fear instead of running. They've learned how to ride fear into battle and use it for noble causes. The night has grown long, and I believe it is time for rest. Tomorrow I will tell you of something truly extraordinary. Those who are so devoted to the goddess that they can call upon her to do miraculous things, cataclysmic things. I will tell you of a cleric from our very own town, and the skill they gained from pure devotion. Until then, I have a tome of tales from every nation to share with you all. I have seen many monsters and many heroes. I have learned of the magic offered by the goddess and the magic that humans can conjure for themselves. I have seen warfare, and I have tales of peace. I cannot wait to tell them all to you. Good night, and thank you.
Legends of Lorelei is a narrative fiction podcast by Livewire Multimedia Stories. The Bard is voiced and created by Gwen Fulman, who can be found as @Gwen_Fulman on Instagram. Written by Gwen Fulman. Co-executive produced by Gwen Fulman and Elizabeth Fulman, with music by Gwen Fulman. If you enjoyed what you just listened to, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/Livewire Multimedia Stories. There, you will get exclusive access to early episodes and fun perks, like access to polls and our Discord server, where we collaborate on projects and resources, share fan art, and just hang out. If you like this project and would like to learn more about it or any of our other projects, please follow us on social media. We are on Tumblr @Livewire Media, on Instagram @Livewire Multimedia, and on YouTube @Livewire Multimedia Stories. But really, the best way to support us is to share this with a friend. Thank you for listening.